South China Morning Post, 11th of October 2023, human rights abuser Russia's petition to join the UN Human Rights Council is denied, while China is elected. As states act as they choose and abuse the impression that justice is being served, as is the case with the United States, international organizations are disintegrating, much like the League of Nations did before. On Tuesday, the UN General Assembly unanimously elected China to the Human Rights Council. Still, Russia was not granted a seat in response to its invasion of Ukraine in 2022. The 47-member council election was anticipated to be a battle between authoritarian governments that have reinterpreted individual rights to represent social order and state-led governance and democracies that support those rights. China finished last among the Asian countries. That implies that China would have lost if there had been competition in the Asian slate, according to Louis Charbonneau, UN Director of Human Rights Watch, a civic organization. Members of the UN sent a clear message to Russia's leadership: your government has committed innumerable crimes against humanity and war crimes, and it has no business being on the Human Rights Council. China won 154 of the 192 votes cast to secure its sixth term on the Geneva-based council, while Russia, which had been ejected the previous year, finished last on the contested Eastern Europe slate with the fewest votes, 83. According to observers, Moscow's candidacy seemed to gather traction in recent weeks before the West and other adversaries supported Albania's adversary. Moscow's possible re-election to the Human Rights Council, according to U.S. Deputy Ambassador Robert Wood, would be an ugly stain on the UN, he told the Security Council on Monday. For a long time, opponents have denounced regularly orchestrated elections for the UN Council and other bodies, which enable economic and regional blocs to strike backroom deals and stifle sincere discussion and competition. China's UN envoy celebrated the triumph. It denounced the West's wrong practices of politicizing human rights issues and double standards. It claimed that this fully demonstrates the international community's full recognition of China's achievements in human rights. In a secret ballot election, candidates compete for staggered three-year mandates. In the uncontested Asia grouping, candidates China, Japan, Indonesia, and Kuwait were elected this year, while Albania and Bulgaria defeated Russia for the two Eastern European seats. Given the expected result, human rights organizations and opponents of the election had pushed the 193 UN members to abstain from voting on China to demonstrate and pressure Beijing. However, they also pointed out that Western countries, like France and the Netherlands in this year's European slate, usually play a similar role by organizing their unopposed candidacies. The Western group does a horrible job of setting an example. I'd love to see competitive slates, stated Rana Siu Inboden, a senior international security fellow at the University of Texas at Austin and a former human rights official with the U.S. State Department. China still cares about that kind of thing. The former U.S. consul in Shanghai, Inboden, continued, China has historically been so sensitive to face, not only at a social level but internationally. It cares about the global south even though it doesn't care much about Western countries. Human Rights Watch and other civil organizations spearheaded the Vote Blank campaign, which seems to have a limited effect since China received 17% fewer votes than Indonesia, the most popular candidate in the Asian slate and any slate with 186 votes. The UN receives most of its money from Washington, and Republican members of Congress, who must approve U.S. funding, have criticized the system for allegedly allowing the election of China, Russia, Libya, Ethiopia, Sudan, and other countries with substantial human rights violations. The significant number of accused violators on the Council has stoked a debate in Washington between proponents of reforming the UN's top human rights body, which former President Donald Trump withdrew the U.S. from in 2018, and opponents who think it is better to have a seat at the table, imperfect as it may be, to effect change. the administration of President Joe Biden decided to re-enter in 2022. According to analysts, China has become more adept at defending its interests within the UN and on the Council. This is the outcome of sending more skillful ambassadors to Geneva, lowering the volume on its rhetoric of wolf warriors, and launching a charm offensive with allies in the Persian Gulf and Africa against purported Western imperialism. Days after the Council issued a harshly critical assessment, Beijing earned a diplomatic win in October when it narrowly defeated a move to discuss its record on Xinjiang, where up to 1 million ethnic Uyghurs have been incarcerated. According to Ted Piconnet, a senior scholar at the Brookings Institution, there's no question they've been on a course of a much more assertive stance at the UN and other institutions. They're making some progress. However, Piconnet, who worked from 2000 to 2008 in the Pentagon, State Department, and U.S. National Security Council, claimed it was a mixed picture. Beijing is facing increased opposition despite acquiring more significant economic and military clout. Europe has started a de-risking approach with China because it fears becoming overly dependent on the country after Russia's invasion disrupted its energy markets. This is happening even as Latin America makes Chinese investments more conditional and Asian countries are becoming more cautious of Beijing's territorial aspirations. Africa is more in China's favor, but there are concerns about China's aggressiveness and evil nature even in that region, Piconnet stated.